Pod Candy.
A podcast about cults.
Pod Candy.
A podcast about cults, crimes, and killers. Before we begin today, we want to take a moment to let you know that this episode contains discussion of violent crime, murder, the deaths of children, and the lasting trauma experienced by their families. Please take care of yourself as you listen.
We don't take lightly what we're about to discuss, and we want to be clear. This is not a fictional story about mystery or intrigue. This is about 4 real girls who lost their lives and the people who loved them, who spent more than 3 decades without answers.
Today we're talking about the Yogurt Shop Murders, a documentary series currently streaming on HBO Max. On December 6, 1991, 4 young girls were found murdered inside a frozen yogurt shop in Austin, Texas. Amy Ayers was 13 years old. Jennifer Harbison was 17. Her sister Sarah was 15. Eliza Thomas was 17.
They were employees at an I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop in North Austin shopping center. They were working a closing shift that night. A fire was reported just before midnight. When firefighters arrived, they found the girls inside. They had been bound, sexually assaulted, and shot. They were also set on fire. Investigators believed in an attempt to destroy evidence.
The crime shook Austin to its core, and what followed was one of the most painful and complicated cases in Texas history.
4 young men were eventually arrested and charged, some of them teenagers themselves at the time of their arrest. 2 were convicted largely on the basis of confessions that they later recanted, saying they had been coerced during lengthy interrogations. Those convictions were ultimately overturned.
This documentary, directed by Margaret Brown, doesn't sensationalize any of that. It sits with the grief. It follows the families across 34 years of waiting, through wrongful arrests, failed prosecutions, and a justice system that let them down over and over again.
And it asks a question that doesn't have a clean answer. What does it mean to carry an unsolved wound for that long? What does it do to a family, to a city?
What happened after the series aired only deepens that question. 3 weeks after the final episode, the Austin Police Department announced a break in the case. New DNA evidence. A killer finally identified after more than 3 decades.
Cold case detective Dan Jackson led that effort. The 5th and final episode of the documentary, titled The End of Wondering, was filmed in the aftermath of that announcement. It explores what the families felt when they finally got a name, and whether, after all this time, justice is even the right word for what they received.
We're grateful you're here with us for this conversation. Let's begin.
Outside my window, it's only raining. When the wind blows, I feel pain.
Okay, so Dori.
Yeah.
This was one of, for me, really, it hit me and it stuck with me for so many days. It's still inside of me. It's the worst story for those families.
Can you imagine though, if it ended at episode 4?
No. And those poor guys that were, and I hate to, I know it's a story about these 4 women, these 4 girls, But these four men who were, accused and also coerced into, two of them coerced into admitting or confessing, and they were gaslit. They were in there, this is a real thing, and I know Dr. John will be able to tell us about this, but this kind of brainwashing, coercive control, when you're trying to get somebody to say something and then you convince them that it's true. I mean, this has happened to me a few times.
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
like during interrogation, arresting?
Oh no. Yes.
I'm like, do you have a
No,
pass? Do
you
tell.
know, it's like, when somebody says, no, 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 you did see this. You did see this. And you're kind of like, did I see that?
Yep.
You're like, no, I didn't. No, I didn't.
It's
No, I
the
didn't. And then there's the
gaslighting.
doubt, you know?
Yeah. I feel like you said, I feel there are victims all around. The young girls, obviously, that were murdered, tragic, terrible, but also those four boys who a few of them are still alive today, and their lives were literally ruined by the police that investigated the case. And I think we've seen this before as well. It makes me so angry that the criminal justice system, I don't even know if I want to use justice after criminal system, right? That's why, like, they showed the Innocence Project, that tries to get like people who've convicted, wrongfully convicted, off. More and more, I think in this day and age, I've become more aware of this, that I think a lot of police departments, crime departments just want to have a name to say, yes, this person did this horrendous thing. And we don't care anything else after that. We got our guy, we've got our men, we've got our boys, we've got
There's
our
no
women.
physical evidence. There was absolutely no physical evidence that these four guys were involved. Yes, one of them had a gun at the mall, wasn't even the same kind of gun. I know we haven't gotten into the gun and the bullets and the ballistics stuff, but how incredible is that kind of like studying of the bullet and then finding the gun that has that bullet and then finding a guy in another state who used that exact gun with those bullet casings or whatever. I mean, I don't know anything about guns or bullets, but I just thought that was fascinating. And also the police officer that interrogated these boys.
The first detective, right?
Yes, I felt that yes, I don't remember his name.
Hector.
Hector. So Hector, I felt, they said he's like a vicious interrogator. And I think that he wanted, he had an ego and he wanted to satisfy those parents and he wanted to be a hero. And, he ruined generations of families from doing that and not, being okay with not having the real person. I mean, they, again, like I said, no physical evidence.
Yeah.
That brilliant investigator that came onto the scene, then we finally got into episode 5, where we see that there's another man, unrelated, that killed other people in other states similarly, and they found him, but he wasn't alive. That
Yeah.
was a little
Well,
sad.
I think like obviously there are advances within DNA and all of that. So something that happens 30 plus years ago, they didn't have the same tools that they have now, but still no excuse, like we both agree, to just berate young kids
Yeah.
into confessing something that they did not do. But can you imagine being 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old in a police department for hours in a room, being yelled at by a cop saying, you did this, just tell us.
Oh,
I get it. I think there is something that's like, you do get a bit brainwashed.
and then you
It's like,
want to get
did
out
I
of there.
do this? What'd you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, a lot of people, Dori, that we've like talked about, they get so tired of being interrogated that they just admit it so they can be done with the conversation, which is the saddest part. And if somebody was like, you did this, part of you might go, wait, was I there?
Well, that's the one guy. The one
That's the
kid
one
was
guy.
like, oh my gosh, I did do this. Like after hours of being told, you did this, you did this. I
Oh,
mean, the one kid that who so I have everybody's names, but so it wasn't Forrest as an
Forrest.
adult man, Forrest, who was the one who he didn't go to prison, but he's been arrested like 40, 50 times because of the all false. All like that he just gets like picked up all the time for things he never did. None of them ever did this. None of these
No.
boys ever did this. One of them is dead because the cops pulled him over and he was killed that way. The three others are still alive, but that one Forrest who was like 15 years old, I think at the time, and he has and his mother, and he's never had a relationship last longer than a couple months, and
because
he doesn't trust
people.
anybody. Yeah, there's
And then
no
they
trust.
find out what he did, what he didn't do, and then they're already tainted. He's like, when people find out, even if he's innocent, it still ruins everything because then it becomes that becomes it.
Yeah,
I felt so bad for him. He was crying in the bar, that guy,
Yes,
Forrest.
the crying guy. Yes.
Awful. It was
sad.
tragic. It was so tragic and sad. And I feel bad for the daughter of the guy who was killed. The daughter.
That's like another like BTK and Gilgo, like another like where the guy who was the murderer, who they finally caught 34 years later, had a family, like, but also truly was a horseshit kind of a guy. Like we were all told, like they'd said he was terrible.
Well, the actual murderer was.
And he's a serial killer.
Yeah, a serial killer.
Not four boys in
a serial killer.
Yeah. Well, and let's also so the girls, I mean, here are young girls that were just working a shift at the yogurt shop, getting ready to close that night, and then were raped, sexually abused, lit on fire, shot, murdered, and the parents didn't get true justice for 30 plus years. But I do want to mention something. At the end in episode 5, and by the way, this was a very long documentary, and I think it could have been cut down. But again, thank goodness there was an episode 5, because if it would have ended on episode 4, honestly, I would have been like, this was a total waste of my time watching this. I mean, I didn't know about it, so that, but okay. But what I did not, I'm just going to say this. I get it. The parents had teenagers, young girls that were killed, but I have an issue with them. When it was told to them that they found the actual serial killer that did it, they didn't give a shit about those boys who were wrongly convicted. I thought
damaged.
I was appalled at, I think it was Amy Ayers' parents and the brother, who were very vigilant about wanting to find answers, but they showed zero compassion for those boys. They did nothing related to that case. And the father and the brother were like, whatever, I don't care. The mother, I don't care that they went through this for 30 plus years. What do you think about that?
That's an interesting question. And I think, and I see your point, I'm not disagreeing with you about that. I think they were so drained and depleted from all that time, and so pulled and pushed and pulled and pushed, that they just didn't have anything left. They had dead kids. These kids were alive. Yes, something bad happened to those kids also. And weren't murdered, but their lives, their trauma, if they were never part of this, they would have been living normal lives.
I agree, but I think that it says something though about the America that we live in today, where there is a lack of empathy. I felt
agree.
I felt so much empathy for the parents that for the sister who is still alive, who's now a therapist, who her younger
wonderful woman.
Yeah, her older sister had been shot. She was one of the victims. But like, I have compassion for these parents and family members, but I also have deep compassion for the boys that were boys at the time that are now adults that have led shitty lives. And yes, they are still alive, but why should we say they still have a life if their lives have been impacted so much by what happened, and they're leading shitty lives now because of this? They can't drive. They're always like worried, am I going to be pulled over? Am I going, am I doing something wrong?
Like their entire life has been like more than half their life has been about this.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it should be one or the other. I'm saying it shocked me, and I do get what you're saying, that they've been through so much. I do realize that. But I do think in America, maybe the world, there is a lack of that like compassion. Because I would be like, if this were my family member, I'd be like, this was tragic. I would be like, and those poor boys that went through that for all these years, I would at least recognize that.
Yes, I feel that I would react differently. I mean, if knowing that those boys were completely innocent and it was a serial killer, there would be a little bit of like, oh my gosh, now this is, I don't claim to know what that feels like, but I can't imagine that I wouldn't feel the way you feel. The one thing that I wanted to tell you or say, that I found, the woman who lost both of her daughters, which was, both of her kids were there.
That was Barbara Ayers.
Yes, so
Barbara
Sarah
Ayers Wilson. Oh, and Sarah Harbison's mother. Okay, Barbara Ayers Wilson and Sarah, mother of Jennifer and Sarah Harbison.
Jennifer and Sarah. She, I thought she spoke very, very eloquently. The one thing that she said that was sort of chilling to me was, and sorry, this is not word for word, but you don't want to know what it's like in my shoes. You don't want to go there. I thought that was an interesting thing, because there have been people in my life that I've been like, that are like, you don't understand because you've never felt this way and you don't know what this feels like to lose a parent or to lose. Well, okay, I know I don't, but I'm trying to relate to you, and then there's there's a disconnect between two people because like this person is not allowing them in. But I like the fact that she said, don't try to feel it. You don't want to. You don't want to feel it. Just
like, you don't want to be in my shoes. You don't want to.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. As opposed to going, oh, you'll never understand what it's like to be in my shoes. There's a difference. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It reminds this whole case kind of also gave me a kind of a feeling of Amy, the Where's Amy from the cruise ship. Gave me a little bit of that, about the parents, the family members that have the unsolved case, and how traumatic, like you were just saying, like how, like nobody has been, you don't want to be in my shoes. Like and also like you have children, the doctor has children. I don't have children, so I don't know what that would feel like. I know if my dog was murdered.
You have a penis dog.
I know. Well, I don't, but I mean, I foster. But I know that it would be very traumatic to not know who committed a crime. Again, and it goes back to the Gilgo Beach that we just did too. All of these like unsolved cold cases. I think until we started doing this podcast, I never gave any thought to unsolved mysteries. Unsolved crimes. I never gave a thought to it. And now that we're doing this, I'm like, yes, this must be, you live and breathe this every day of your life.
Every day. Do you think that's a good time to open the green room door?
I mean, if Dr. John is living,
he's waiting out in the rain
this every day of his life. Yeah, it's really pouring out there. We've moved. Well, we have an outdoor now. We have an outdoor and indoor green room. So we have a Four Seasons room that we can. So I think the doctor is, but it's not complete yet. So I think it's pouring on him. Doctor, are you okay, John?
I'm awful grumpy here because in our new green room here, which is really green, by the way, the cookies must have been left out. They're absolutely stale, and
I thought they were wet. Are they wet?
They're wet and
stale.
Those were the Pepperidge Farm ones that Stacey bought.
Yeah.
A month
they were
and
on
a half
sale
ago?
actually.
I think our crack producer Jeremy needs to get on the ball with some better cookies and coffee here. And the coffee tastes like that coffee that always tastes like rust.
Folgers?
Yeah, probably. Which will never be an advertiser for us.
Chock full of nuts.
Say, we love you, Folgers. If you want to.
Yeah, wait, no. Folgers take sponsor and chock full of nuts. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Nuts. Oh, I love chicory coffee. Don't you love chicory coffee?
Yeah, speaking of chicory, I'm supposed to go to New Orleans next week.
There you go.
And I canceled my trip.
And some beignets. Make sure you have a beignet.
I canceled my trip because I don't want to gain weight. Just kidding.
Just because you canceled because you didn't want to eat beignets?
I canceled because
that's a documentary in itself.
As grumpy as I am, let me, as I often do, I'd like to talk first of all about the documentary as it is. It is grueling. It is grueling to watch.
Grueling.
When both of you suggested this one and it's 5 episodes, I'm going, whoa. But I'll tell you, last weekend I binged watched it. It's riveting for those who can get through it, but it is long. And I think that the thing that's very different about this documentary as opposed to the other ones we've seen, it focuses on the police work a lot, which I want to comment on, and maybe a little controversial to my co-hosts here. And also the families. It really got into the families and the effect of the families. So audience, if you really want to see the devastation that happens to families that are crime victims, this is really it. And of course, those 4 boys that were falsely accused.
Wait, can I say one thing too?
Absolutely.
I think we forgot to mention the first documentarian. She was the one who, the reason why we had all the footage in the documentary from before is because she was doing this as a project, but never completed it, right? She never put it out, but they used all of that footage for this documentary done back in 2009.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Although I don't want to comment on the first documentarian because she irritated me, but we don't talk about victims on our show. But
no,
every single time she was,
she's a documentarian. Obviously, she's a documentarian, so rip her to shreds, John. What is your
but I didn't like her having her baby on camera.
There you go. I
didn't like that. That annoyed me. Why do you have your baby? This is a show about children that have lost their lives, and you're sitting with a cute baby. I don't like that.
But wouldn't that be the fault of these documentarians, more recent, to say, can you put your baby somewhere else?
Oh, absolutely. I think that was an error in the show. It really aggravated me that, and I don't think she played that big of a role. I think that was a waste of time. I mean, show her once. Thank you for this footage we got, but
her footage was good because
the footage
gives
was
context.
Outstanding.
Yeah,
the footage was outstanding, but yeah, that irritated me.
And she
But
was
more,
boring. I'm just going to say it. She was
yeah,
boring.
there was a number of things in the series that prolonged it, I think, that could have been cut down a little bit. But you both talked about the police work. And I want to comment on that because I work with the police, and I think I have some insights to say here in a second. But yeah, this Hector Polanco, I believe, yeah, Polanco, the detective you talked about, who was just an ass. I mean, he was abusive to people he interrogated, and not just these four boys. They said he had a history of being, a very stringent interrogator and abusive, etc. But he had 100% record of getting confessions. I'm sorry, and well, that was supposed to be applauded, but he was coercing
Yeah,
people.
that's not a flex, dude.
That's not an award you should get. And again, as I commented about the documentary, I think, as opposed to what you both said, I think it gives us some insights as to how grueling police work is. Because I felt that John Jones, the lead investigator of the case, who took over after this abuse of Hector Polanco, he was a nice man, and also towards the end in the last episode, he showed a lot of empathy. And I thought, here's another interesting point of this documentary. The documentary showed the effect of this case on John Jones, the lead police detective that was taken off the case, the first lead detective. He retired because of this, and he was very upset over things that were happening. And in one of the last minutes of the whole series of the documentary, he's shown hugging the sister of Amy, one of the victims, and they hugged, meaningfully and for a long time. I think he really showed a lot of compassion and empathy for the case. And
He did.
we often don't see police shown that way.
But he said his strong suit is not the interrogation part of it. So that's why I think he was removed. And also, Mike Huckabee, not the Mike Huckabee that we know now, but the Mike Huckabee as his name.
Spelled differently.
He was also a part of it, and he also, like, he seemed to me a little cray cray, but he seemed genuine about wanting to find some justice and about what he did. So you are correct, John. I do think it's difficult, obviously, to be an investigator. I don't take anything away from that. Yeah. But I also think, like you had said too, somebody who has 100% confession rate, what are those confessions? They are coerced. They are maybe false confessions.
And I want to talk about that because, but first of all, I have a little tangent. I've been waiting and dying to say this, Dori, because I think Mike Huckabee, the young Mike Huckabee could have gone on the Dori hottie list. But then did you see? But did you see him? But did you see him as an older fella? He was like,
I thought you meant as old Mike Huckabee. I was going to be like, you don't know my type at all.
No, the young Mike Huckabee was.
Mike Huckabee was kind of a bae.
He could have been a Dori hottie when he was young, but then Dori, a lesson for you. Look at what these hotties turn out to when they get a little older.
Well, look at their parents. You're supposed to look at the parents.
There you go. But anyway, back to police. I agree with you both when you talked about the interrogations, and these things go on all the time. We have a case here, I think it's 2 cases in Chicago, where police officers are indicted because of the abusive techniques they use to get confessions, and these confessions are being overturned. I forget the most famous one. I think his name is Burgess or something like that. And now all these cases not only being overturned, but they're all suing the city because of false convictions. But this happens, and I don't think I've ever told this to both of you, but not only in my work with the police, but because of this, a police officer, police commander, wanted to do a book on policing and asked me to be a co-author some years ago. So in doing that, I did a lot of research on policing and policemen, and it's a really interesting profession in many ways in terms of what they not only do they face, of course, but the training they get, the background of police. In the early days of our country, policemen were hired because they were big goons. They were strong, big, tough men. That's why a lot of immigrant individuals got to be policemen. There was a lot of big German guys and Irish guys, especially in the big city, that were just tough guys. They're, and I think this Hector Polanco comes from that breed of just being a tough, abusive person. And you both talked about the interrogation itself and the brainwashing, and you were right on. And the techniques are right out of the handbook of how to brainwash somebody. You keep them up. You're relentless. You wear them down, etc. And so these four boys were victims of that. But I do want to say a couple of things on that. One, it plagues me in this case that particularly that Robert Springsteen, when he was in that interrogation, he revealed he knew exactly the position those girls were laying on top of each other, which was one of the things that the police really picked up on. How would you possibly know that? And each one of those interrogations had a little tidbit of they have some information there that nobody could have known. And the documentary made a big case about how else, which I also think the documentary did really, really good. It was almost movie-like in the sense that it builds you up towards this crescendo, and then all of a sudden, whoops, there's a twist. It wasn't them. But that plagues me that these kids knew some things about that murder that they couldn't have known.
Did
And
they
excuse
though?
me
I
for
mean,
saying.
I don't
Yeah.
know about the position. What do you, Stacey? I don't know. Do you think I don't know the position thing? I thought was like kind of like they were laying like that. Like I may be like, because you're in there for hours and hours. Like, how were they? How did you find them? And then they said the guy was like, oh, they were like this.
But Dori, that's the point. It wasn't, you could make up kind of a position of a dead body, but they were laying on top of each other and nobody would have known that. That was not in the press. That
How
was not
were they?
in,
How were they? They were under eight, like under 18. How
yes.
were they? What is the law? Like I know this was 30 some years ago, but what is the law about that? And why they didn't have an attorney present? They were in there for hours and hours as kids, no parents, no guardian with how did that happen where they were talking to these investigators for hours upon hours? Do you know that?
Well, no, the key thing you're missing is that those interrogations came after, well, years after the killings. They didn't call them in. They were all over 18 at that time that they were brought in for questioning. They were not brought in for questioning as teens.
Oh,
They
well,
were
no,
all
they were too
adults.
young. Oh, so they were?
They were not teens when, yeah, if you remember the chronology, this
Huh.
went on and on for, I think it was, excuse me for getting this a little bit
I know
wrong,
up until
6 or 7 years,
2000
6 or 7 years.
right? It happened in 1990 something.
1991 is
91.
when the
And
murder.
then, when the interrogations that we saw were happening, that was 7 years later.
Yes.
Of all
Yeah.
the boys.
They
Got it.
did not bring them in for interrogation until 7 years after. So they were all adults.
Got
And
it.
just remember
Yeah.
their faces when they were kids. They looked like teenagers. And during the interrogations, these were men. So
You asked me what I thought about the the bodies on top of each other and the people knowing positions and whatever. I just like the Menendez brothers, like, I know it's not the same case, but just like them, I believe them. I just believe them inside. And you kind of have to just go, okay, maybe circumstantially there was something that they knew, or they figured out, or they made up. Who knows? I don't think they were there. I mean, there's no
Stacey, I hear you, but like I said, the word it plagues me because I was just given one example of things they knew. Each one of them knew something that they couldn't have possibly known.
But if they were interviewed 7 years after it happens and there's news reports going on and the town is talking and all of that, you're not telling.
But no, the documentary said that even those little facts were never in the news. Only the police had them. So here's what I'm getting at to kind of agree or not agree with both of you is that I just think my theory is those kids were maybe around when the serial killer did this. Either they because remember they used to hang out at this creek, which was just
the creek people.
It was just a short distance from the back door of the yogurt shop. And I just wondered if they peeked in at what happened or were they around the serial killer?
Well, that could very well be the case.
Why wouldn't they have said anything? Like, what if they said, we saw somebody kill somebody? Like, why wouldn't they have done that?
Well, that gets me back to this that I don't think you drew out either. These kids weren't angels. They
No.
they were
punks.
Well, one kid was walking around with a gun.
Yeah, and the next day after the murders, remember they stole a car and went to San Antonio.
Yes,
but just because a kid is not an angel does not mean that they need to be tried for murdering 4 young girls.
All the kids that are not angels, let's just, put them in a room.
We're just going to put them in
until they
we're
grow
just going to interrogate all of them.
Let's round them all up, What did Shakespeare say about lawyers? We should
not trust them.
I think it was something
what
like
did Shakespeare say about lawyers?
It's something about throw them in the ocean or something like that. I forget.
Yeah, I would love if Shakespeare never said that, but we're saying it on Pod Candy. That
I know.
You know what Shakespeare? You know what Shakespeare?
We're just showing how artsy and cultural we are.
Smart and connected.
But could these kids have been fascinated about what's going on? Could the serial killer have been in the creek with the creek people and these boys and he was kind of cool, like a Charles Manson kind of guy, and hey, look what I just did. I just shot some girls, etc. And I can see teenage boys, being curious about what happened and then go, oh shit, let's get out of here. But that's maybe when Robert Springsteen saw the bodies that were laying. It just baffles me.
Understand why they wouldn't say anything then.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around.
But I also think too, maybe it is you don't say anything too because you hear about you're afraid of the police too. Like you don't want to say anything because then, and also they were kids. So it's like, you don't even know what is going on in their minds at the time and they're afraid and you just never know. Again, I don't want to seem like I'm a total stan for the boys, but I think seeing them as adults and listening to them, and my heart did break for them. It really did, because they are victims too. No matter if they stole a car back in the day as a kid and, did some really shitty things, they didn't murder these girls.
I agree.
And
I agree. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. And that leads me to talk and comment on one thing you both talked about, is that the parents. And when you talked about them, not having a reaction or any feelings towards these boys after they found out that they in fact did not kill the girls. And I think both of you had very credible theories on this. Stacey said, they were probably emotionally drained. And Dori, you said, a lack of empathy. I think probably both of those things are operating. But let me talk from a psychological point of view of what happens to victims' families, and when such a horrible thing happens to them.
Or heinous.
Yeah, heinous. uh, they get damaged. We have to understand these people are psychologically damaged. And I don't mean that in a negative or criticism way, is that this caused damage in the families. And so when you talk about being drained or lack of empathy, their lives also were affected so much. And that's what I think the documentary brought out so well, is just how these families were so damaged by this. And so, can we expect them to feel, think, say the same thing that we would when we found out that the boys were innocent? I don't think so, and I think they had to settle into their own grief and feelings. Who knows what they feel now? Don't forget, this fifth episode was just filmed and released, and it's been less than a year. It was, I think, August of 2025. So it's still fresh in these families' minds of how they have to reconcile that these boys didn't do it.
Yeah, that one sister-in-law though, I wouldn't want to cross her path.
No.
She was like, she's like a fuck around and find out kind of a gal.
Which one? Oh, yeah.
The
Sean's
heir,
wife.
so it's the heir.
Sean's wife.
Yeah. She is like hardcore.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
yeah. And she seems to fit in the family well. Again, I don't want it to seem like,
Yes.
their daughter died. I
Right.
get it, that the family and the sister of what, Sean, is it? Like, I get it that she died, but I didn't get a true sense of like of like an emotional,
You're right.
compassion from them, and I just thought that I didn't resonate with that.
Right. That's okay.
I think, Dori, you're right. But I also think we have to look at it from the lens of these people have psychological damage themselves. So my very point here is, can we expect them, like us, who weren't that, of course, intimately involved with any of this, to say something like, well, gee, they should show more concern over these four boys? I don't know. It might be too early, because this is only a few months after they found out. This was filmed as they found out that the boys didn't do it, and this serial
but
killer did.
Sonora Thomas, so that was the sister
Yeah.
of what is it? Sonora was the sister, and Eliza, the one who's the therapist now, right? Like, she's a
Right.
therapist. Her mother had passed away, and wasn't part of the documentary, but she was very non-emotional, I think, in her demeanor, just very.
Yeah.
But I know that it affected her so much as a child, because she was almost like, maybe, treated not poorly, but kind of forgotten about, because it was all about the sister. Then, when the sister passed away, but I did feel something for, like, I think, did have some emotion, even though she was so stoic in her demeanor.
I think the most emotion she showed, I get back to that scene where she was hugging John Jones, the cop.
Yeah.
That's the most emotion and empathy I saw out of her. And so I think you're right. I mean, she was deeply affected, and again, what a wonderful person. But let me talk about the family grief a little bit, because I think that's a really big takeaway from this documentary for our audience. And the documentary did so well to really get intimate into these families' lives. It really brought us close to these families. And you both didn't comment on this, but did you notice that they showed the initial grief, and how horrible this affected the families. But then at the end, when it was over, I thought it was fascinating how each one of these family members had statements that gave them peace and gave them closure. And isn't it interesting after 35 years that it took this finding out who did it to seal over that grief? And that's what happens with victims' families, is that their grief initially is typical grief of loss and death. It's like we study Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her famous studies of the 5 stages of grieving and death and loss. But then it turns into the case. Their grief, their loss turns into, let's solve this. That was the whole thing about these family members trying to be a part of the investigation and being angry because the police wasn't telling us anything. Well, they're not police. I mean, how much are you supposed to tell the family, etc.? And then this whole episode where they had that crime group where, Sean and his wife, the woman you were just talking about, they solicited this crime group. I think it was in Massachusetts or Connecticut or something. And, they were trying to be detectives in this whole thing. But the grief, interestingly, the grief turns into solving the case. And so that's why when the case is solved, and I wrote down some of the quotes from the family. I think it's very telling. Amy's dad, kind of cowboy looking, tough, man's man kind of guy, said, "I can now go on with my life and have some fun." Wow.
Yeah,
That's
that was poignant when he said that.
Yeah.
They can live. Like the mother of the 2 girls also, I think, said something of that nature, like,
now they're at
now I
peace.
can do some stuff that I want to do and
Right.
not feel bad about it.
Sean, Amy's brother, said, "It's over. It's over." He could finally put it as over. Another one said, "I don't have to count the days anymore. I used to count the days since it
I
happened."
think that was Amy's dad that said that.
I think he said that as well. You're right.
Yeah, he no longer is he stopped counting how many days it had been since.
Yeah. But and it was about the investigation. It was centered on our grief turns into this has to be solved. And I thought that was.
I have a controversial question.
Yeah.
Did either of your opinions change about froyo, about frozen yogurt? Like watching this as awful and horrendous as this story was, I was kind of like, I could go for frozen yogurt with some
I was like, maybe I'll stop at Love's later. It did not affect my feelings about frozen yogurt. No.
Yeah, it did. Mine, Dr. John, are you still a froyo kind of a guy? Were you ever?
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, that didn't come to my mind at all.
You like froyo?
But I also didn't get a taste for it after watching, I think I binged 4 episodes in a row on Sunday evening.
See, I
stayed up way too late.
I watched like 1 or 2 a day, and I'm like, you know what I could go for right now? Some frozen yogurt.
Okay, a tangent.
What does that say of Dr. John? What does
psychologically, what is wrong with Dori?
I forget. There's nothing wrong with that. You get a mea culpa on that. There's nothing wrong with that. One of our documentaries, I forget what it was. It was revolved around food, and I did get hungry for that particular food. But
I hope it wasn't like the Ed Gein story.
Can I, you 2 entertainers, can I bring up something of your opinion? And again, it's a tangent, like a hunger for yogurt. What did you think of that music, that theme song?
Oh, yeah.
That was weird. That was very weird.
I used to live in a devil's town.
Yeah, that was a weird song. I agree.
Yeah, I was really turned off by that song. Sorry, songwriter, and sorry, Michelle
sorry,
Brown.
Songwriter, sorry,
Margaret
babies, Sorry, Folgers.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
We should have
Sorry,
a list
yogurt.
after every episode when we say our sorries.
Why,
So
why
let me ask
don't
you something. Is I can't believe it's yogurt still in existence?
I don't
don't
think
know.
we have one in Illinois, right?
Wasn't there something called TCBY, the country's
what? I
best
love
Yeah.
TCBY. That
So
was
why
a
are there so many TCBY? I can't believe it's yogurt. Menchie's, Loves. You know, it's like But what is this? The country's best yogurt. I can't believe it's yogurt. What? I don't know.
can't believe it's not butter. What are you trying to say, Stacey? What
I
is
think
it? What
I think what Stacey's trying to say is we should all invest in the yogurt industry, because it seems like
kind of
it's
yogurt
booming.
do you guys like?
Well, I don't like
Froyo.
regular yogurt. I only like frozen yogurt.
Me too. I love the froyo that's like the original tart. Just like me. I'm the original
I'm not a
tart.
tart person. I'm more of a sweet person. It's got to
I
have
am
some
too, but I like
sweetness.
the original tart, and so does my daughter.
I like going to Europe, and I love that this conversation is now turned into our eating habits. But I do like in Europe is the only place I will eat yogurt, like just like if they have it for breakfast. No, not frozen, just regular
yogurt you'll eat in Europe. I understand.
In Europe, yeah.
Dori, you're in a total different class of people than Stacey and I. Eating yogurt.
Really
what do you
low
do?
class.
Just fly to yogurt to get? Fly to Europe.
Fly to yogurt to get in Europe.
Yeah, like I go all the time. I'm just saying, like when I've been, like when in Rome, I'm gonna eat
when in Rome.
pasta.
That's when I eat yogurt.
Nice backtracking there. But now we get a little insight into your lifestyle here. I fly to Europe to get my yogurt. I'm sorry.
I just want to say one thing that we didn't mention, that the fire and then the water in that space really messed up the evidence. And I think that if they had not had that situation happen, maybe the fire only, but the water, that just messed everything up. And so I just think
again, I think
and depressing and just tragic.
And we really didn't even get into the sexual assault too of
exactly.
Young
That's
girls
awful.
too.
And one of them tried to get away, and she was separate from the three. And it's just, so everybody just watch the Yogurt Shop
Maybe
Murder.
we need to do it. Yeah, maybe because it was a 5-parter, we need to do a 2-parter on this one.
Well,
I don't want to, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. Let me just say too that Dan Jackson, the police officer, that the detective that ultimately solved it, what a brilliant journey he took. What a very good insight into police work and how police work often has dead ends and often is very long and twisted, and things go wrong. I think that's another one of the glories of this documentary. But one of my maybe last comments is, again, going back to these kids, these 4 boys that were falsely accused. The other thing we didn't talk about is, where are their families and what happened? Why were they, so wild and uncontrolled? I would have liked a documentary to.
Why did one of them have a gun?
Yeah, why kids?
Why did a kid have a gun? Even in the 90s.
Around, right?
Come on.
Well, it is Austin. It is Texas.
Well, yeah, which is,
this ain't Texas.
Concealed
ain't
carry.
Yeah,
and finally, a little bit on the Brasher, the killer. I forget his first name, but look at Stacey said it so well. Look at what a shit show this guy was. I mean, a couple of things I want to say, which is just, fascinating. One is that
Robert Eugene Brasher.
Right. Robert Eugene Brasher.
Son of a bitch.
Look at the DNA that he comes from. His father, when he gets arrested for something and does 5 years in prison, bails out the gun that he used in the murders. His father, not him, but bails out the gun, buys the gun from the police. I don't even know how that happens, but the second thing is, he was sexually abused as a kid, and his targets on all his serial killing were, like young teenage girls where he raped in every one of these murders that he did. Totally messed up person. And his
Totally.
wife also messed up. The daughter, and it was a great segment of Brasher's daughter um,
Yes.
talking about this whole thing. And
And knowing that he's guilty and a bad guy and
yeah,
admitting it and all that
yeah,
stuff is really good and
yeah, that
really
was excellent in
refreshing.
the documentary. And
Yeah.
she reached out, talk about empathy. She reached out to the families and,
Yes, I thought that was really, really
powerful,
cool.
powerful stuff.
And obviously she's evolved and hasn't turned into a monster.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
which is
thank God maybe he's dead. I don't remember why he died for some reason. How did he die?
Brasher killed himself. He was held up in a hotel room with his whole family. He's always on the run. And the police were closing in on him. He sends the family out of the room and he shoots himself. He's under the bed and shoots himself. And, so he killed.
Whoa, that
Yeah.
is intense.
Maybe this is the best closing psychological statement. The daughter, her name was Deborah Brasher, is a testament to something that I've seen in my whole career, which is that you can have a horrible upbringing, horrible, evil, terrible parents, and some kids turn out okay. You can't just say it's an absolute 100% correlation that coming from an evil, horrible background is going to necessarily make you,
And
evil and
evil.
horrible and a criminal. She
And
seemed
also,
like a
people can
great
become
person.
evil with good parents too. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Kind of was one of my claims to fame in my career of saying to people, waving my arm in this field, saying, that, we can't just assume these kinds of things. But anyway,
All right, kids, you guys can keep talking, but I do have to run.
all right,
I'm
go make some
are
money.
you
I'm gonna
literally
I'm
gonna
gonna end the
run?
recording. See everybody.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, wait, before you go, look at what I got from my daughter.
Oh my God.
gosh,
Cotton
they're
candy
so
socks.
cute.
Adorable pod candy socks.
Oh, they're so cute. Where are our faces? I thought our
Did
faces were
Courtney
going
get
to be
us
on.
one?
Yeah, our faces aren't on that one. I don't know.
We
Did
need the
Courtney
one
get us
with our
some socks?
faces on them. Those
Yeah.
are so
We'll
cute.
work on it.
Adorable.
I'll ask her
All
how
right,
she
bye,
got
guys.
them.
I do have to run. Okay, bye. Thanks
Bye.
for the wonderful times. Okay, bye-bye. Please listen to our next episode, Bring Me the Beauties, a Model Cult.
Thank you all for listening, and spread the word to your relatives and friends to listen as well. Our original theme music is written and performed by Midnight Current. You can hear more of their great music on their SoundCloud account.
For more about us and to catch up on every episode of Pod Candy, head over to podcandypodcast.com. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.
Pod candy.